Welcome to episode 6 of The Boundless Love of God, a study in the book of Hosea, verse by verse, or kind of chapter by chapter. And I'm Rustin Comer.
And I'm Danielle Jones. And we're glad you're sticking with us for this.
I know. 8 episodes total. This is a shorter one.
Yep.
So you're over a third of the way there.
We don't ever know if they're short, though, truthfully. We've intended shortness, and they have been short sometimes. So
they're not.
We'll see.
They're not short episodes.
It's
just
shorter
8 episodes.
series.
It's not 2 months. It's just 8 episodes.
Gotcha.
So
this is going to be 2 hours long.
So strap in because we got a long way today. We're both part of the clergy team here at Wayzata Community Church, and we're glad that you're joining us. You may be wondering why we're sitting so close. It's because we've been
It's our job.
Pandemicking together. So let's jump into the ideas of episode 6. So when we used to come to church before we would watch it, right?
I'm trying to remember that. Yep.
But even now, as we watch it on screen, we come to church with some basic assumptions.
Yeah.
We assume that we're going to be greeted by some friendly people.
Which happens even on video.
And
actually, if you watch through Facebook, you'll get some comments like, hey, good morning.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
kind of cool.
You assume that you're going to see some friends and fellow believers, Christians in this space, which happens digitally as well. You assume that there will be workers kind of scurrying around busy with the work of ministry and make sure the building's up to par and all of that. That's happening digitally. You just can't see it. You assume that there will be coffee available to help you wake up and engage.
I drink a cup with every digital service we have on Sunday mornings. So I'm solidly 3 cups in on Sundays, usually 4.
Nice.
There's still a lot of coffee happening for me.
Drinking soda, but that's what I would do on a Sunday.
That is, you'd have your cup.
Yeah, my cup.
Which is hidden below the table in this moment.
Right.
See, it's church right now.
And you assume that the worship music will be encouraging and is going to point you away from problems and stress and worries of your week and then move you towards going back into the world to serve God.
Yep.
Right? These are all assumptions that we hold about church. You also assume, or at least hope, that the pastor is going to preach a sermon, hopefully a new sermon.
We've all been there.
Right?
When you're like, I know I've heard this story before.
Have you ever preached the same sermon?
You know what? I don't, because I'm going to admit something to all of you now, because I usually look over them again and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I preached that. But I like to chalk that up to trying to be relevant to the moment.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't either, but I get it. I understand why people do.
Yeah.
My grandfather preached for 50 years and had a whole filing cabinet full of sermons, and he would pull out different ones at different times. So
Yep.
Sometimes I use wedding stuff over. But,
for sure. I mean, but there's sort of a thing you say with that, too.
Yeah.
There's a tone.
Yeah, totally.
Usually hopeful.
So you hope, right, that there's going to be a new sermon, you're going to hear something, a new word from God. Now imagine, if you will, going to church for 5 decades, 50 years, give or take a decade.
Yep.
You've heard the same sermon.
I think there's churches like that.
Every single Sunday.
Yes. Wow.
Imagine that your pastor just preached about the very same thing in the very same Bible passage, Sunday after Sunday, with passion and conviction as if you've never heard it before. It's pretty hard to imagine.
Yeah.
That this is exactly what's happening in Hosea's ministry.
Are there new videos, or is there new anything that he's using?
Totally. It was all about this one reality of calling the people back from a life of spiritual prostitution.
Yeah.
And Hosea believed that's what God wanted him to do. So that's what he did. So why preach the same sermon over and over and over again all those years? Because his sermon on the sinfulness of Israel and the judgment that was coming for it and the need to repent and begin to walk with the Lord again, he believed was the most important thing that they could hear for their lifetime. It was the gospel. It was the good news for them. If they want to encounter the good news, they've got to respond.
Yeah.
And until they respond, he's going to preach it over and over and over.
So Israel's clearly not responding.
Israel is not responding. So after 50 years or more of preaching the same sermon, Israel's still in sin, they're still idolatrous, spiritually adulterous, and in love with the world. God's still frustrated and hurt, and judgment was still coming, and repentance is still their only hope.
Yeah.
So as we look at Hosea 8 through 10, we find that Hosea is still preaching the same sermon, and there's not a lot of new stuff that we haven't already talked about. But there are still important things to pull from it.
And maybe some of the beauty of revisiting the same message again and again is that we come just a little bit different every time. I mean, 2 days ago, what was happening in your life 2 days ago when you watched the last installment of this? Something different is happening now, unless you're streaming them all at one time, and then,
And then it's all
maybe
the same.
nothing's changed in the last couple of minutes. But I mean, it is interesting, the saying the same thing lands differently because we are in a different spot sometimes. So.
Yeah. Like you never
a
come
good
to
thing.
the river at the same place. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think about, as we start this, just an important reality about prophetic literature is it is a circle, right? So if you put the people sinned as a dot on the circle, God calls a prophet to bring a message of conviction to the people. Kind of come around the circle a little bit. Then the people respond to that message eventually. God forgives them, and the people sin again, and a new prophet's born. Right?
That's really interesting.
There's just a circle that continues in the life and the kind of study of the prophets.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing in Hosea is a slower progression than you see in a lot of the prophetic literature. It's not, as rapid. Here, we're stuck in that conviction piece for 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different set. So today we're going to read chapters 8, 9, and 10, but we're going to take just little pieces out of it because it is still the same thing. And so we're just going to pull pieces from each of them to kind of get a picture of it and go from there. It'll be on the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to read along or pull out your Bible and read with us, reading from the message.
Yep, so here's some snippets from chapter 8. Blow the trumpet, sound the alarm. Vultures are circling over God's people who have broken my covenant and defied my revelation. Predictably, Israel cries out, "My God, we know you," but they don't act like it. Israel will have nothing to do with what's good, and now the enemy is after them. They crown kings, but without asking me. They set up princes, but don't let me in on it. Instead, they make idols, using silver and gold, idols that will be their ruin. Throw that gold calf god on the trash heap, Samaria. I'm seething with anger against that rubbish. How long before they shape up? And they're Israelites. A sculptor made that thing. It's not God.
And then chapter 9.
Yep.
Don't waste your life in wild orgies, Israel. Don't party away your life with the heathen. You walk away from God at the drop of a hat, and like a whore sell yourself promiscuously at every sex and religion party on the street. All that party food won't fill you up. You'll end up hungrier than ever. At this rate, you'll not last long in God's land. Some of you are going to end up bankrupt in Egypt. Some of you will end up disillusioned in Assyria. Part of what's happening here is, right, like Hosea is saying that what God is telling them is that they don't change their ways. The empires that surround them are going to conquer them. Right? Because they're seeing the foolishness. And they'll conquer them. As refugees in Egypt and Assyria, you won't have much of a chance to worship God, sentenced to rations of bread and water, and your souls polluted by the spirit-dirty air. You'll be starved for God, exiled from God's own country. You'll be homesick for the old holy days. You'll miss festivals of worship with God. Be warned, when you escape from the frying pan of disaster, you'll fall into the fire of Egypt. Egypt will give you a fine funeral. What use What use will all your God-inspired silver be then, as you eke out a living in a field of weeds? Time's up. Doom's at the doorstep. It's payday.
I was just thinking when you kind of broke into this passage, and then as we read the rest of it, chapter 9, that so often we read words like this as sort of this is what God is going to do to them. But instead, it's God's way of saying, this is, like you said, this is where this will end up. Mm-hmm. The road you're on is going to lead to this destination. And I think that's really important to remember.
God doesn't do it to you.
God does not do it to you. You do it to yourself. I do it to myself. Communities do it to themselves. Mm-hmm. And again, like you said in one of our last episodes, God at times stands back and just says, I can't intervene anymore to turn you myself. You have to turn yourself. So I will let this play out. It will pain me, mm-hmm. and it will be brutal, but it has to play out.
Some of my favorite conversations with John Estrom, who, was an addict for a long time and then now helps other people who suffer with addiction find their way free, is he talks about this a lot. Like, as a person who has been addicted before, he can see where the paths lead, but he can't stop the people that he's nurturing from going down those paths.
Yeah.
Right? It is their choice. And sometimes he just has to say like this is where it leads. Like, I can tell you, I've walked that path.
Yeah.
I've ended up in Egypt and Assyria.
Yeah.
And I can tell you what that leads to. It leads you bankrupt working weeds for another kingdom.
Yeah.
But it's not like John doesn't. He can't rescue them, and he can't change that road.
Yeah.
Like, that road goes where it goes.
And he counsels others. I mean, he really gets a lot of family members that come and say, oh my gosh, my loved one is struggling with addiction. And he really is pretty frank and often says, there's not much you can do. I mean, you can speak truth into their lives. You can set boundaries. You cannot enable them. But that's about what you can do. Yeah.
Right? And in some ways, God's saying the same thing about himself. Like, I can put roadblocks in front of you, but you're going down that road no matter what roadblock I put in front of you. So, I'm just telling you.
Here's where you're going.
This is where you're going.
Yeah. Doom's at the doorstep.
Doom is at the doorstep.
Yeah. So chapter 10 is just this one little piece. Israel was once a lush vine, bountiful in grapes. The more lavish the harvest, the more promiscuous the worship. The more money they got, the more they squandered on gods in their own image. Their sweet smiles are sheer lies. They're guilty as sin. God will smash their worship shrines, pulverize their God images. It's like that old Eddie Haskell metaphor, right? Remember Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver? I used to watch Leave It to Beaver reruns all the time, like in the summer. This would be now when I would see it. And there was a kid on there named Eddie Haskell.
I've heard of him.
You're going to get a lot of emails about this one.
I am sorry.
People are going to send you episodes probably.
I know.
So he was always like, hi, Mrs. Cleaver. It's good to see you, Mrs. Cleaver. And then they would always go to Wally and the Beeves' room, and he would be planning some sort of...
He was the bad influence.
He was the bad guy, yeah. I mean, back then, I don't even remember what he did. It wasn't bad.
Right.
Whatever it
Pop
was.
fireworks.
Totally. It was, right. Exactly. That's exactly right. So anyway, that's what it reminds me of, that, God's just saying, I'm kind of onto you,
Yeah, I get it. I get you. I get where you're going. I get, and how, there's something beautiful about that too. There's something beautiful about a person like John who's been down this road saying, you're not going to fool me.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to fool me, and I'm not going to stop you because you've got to hit your own bottom.
Yep.
And I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
Right? That's the part that I love about this is God never says when you're taken up into Egypt or when you're taken into Assyria that he's going to walk away.
Yeah.
He's just saying you're going to miss the things.
Well, he's saying you're walking away.
Right.
He's saying, I'm sort of watching you walk away.
Yeah. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
No. Yep.
And I'm not going to go anywhere once you're in Egypt.
Yeah.
Right? And John says that all the time. John's going to be here to help you pick up the pieces when you're ready to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
That's grace and goodness and beauty and love lived to its fullness. And that, that's still a part of this story. Even in this, again, preaching the same message over and over and over, it doesn't mean that God isn't there waiting with loving open arms for true repentance where you've made a decision and you're living in a different direction.
Yeah.
I mean, that, talking about John and this stuff, like, that's the steps.
Yeah.
That's the Al-Anon and the AA steps they're the granulation tissue. Like, do these steps and you'll granulate the way you're supposed to.
Yeah.
That's true repentance.
It is. And it's a process, and it takes time.
And it's painful, and it's hard.
But it's also good. I mean, I think there's a grace in it because we couldn't handle all the work at one time.
Totally.
Yep.
So, I think the challenge in this piece of this episode is for those of you who are living in the midst of this, because we do have a lot of people who are living in addicted realities, that their family members are addicted or that they're suffering their own addiction.
Yeah.
First, know that God hasn't left anyone in that story.
Yeah.
Right? He's not left the people who are waiting by the sidelines for the worst possible news ever. I remember my brother was missing, then bad news could drop at any moment. God was always present to my parents in the midst of that. It was real. And God's faithful and in that spot with you.
Yeah.
And knows what it feels like.
Right. That's true too. That's a good point.
And if you're in that place of living in the struggle of addiction, know that God's not leaving you there either. That God is ready for you whenever you've reached that place where you can truly turn to be there waiting.
I might have shared this in one of our classes before, but I used to always pray for someone in my life who was in just really challenging circumstances. Again and again, I would pray, just throw her a rope, God, throw her a rope, throw her a rope. And one day God spoke to me and said that's actually not the prayer. The prayer is that she'll grab the rope. Just pray that she'll grab the rope.
Because the rope's always there.
Because the rope's always there. And that was really transformative for me, to stop seeing it as something God might have been doing or letting her do, and to see it as something that she just couldn't
get there yet.
Get out of it. Yeah.
So grab the rope.
Grab the rope.
Go in peace.
Amen.